practice some, what I would consider some key sewing skills, especially if you're kind of new to sewing or you kind of want to venture out from just sewing straight seams. Maybe if you're a quilter, you want to maybe jump into making garments or jump into making handbags and things like that. So it comes in handy to practice some of the skills that I'm gonna go over that you'll need in order to make this super simple little basket to hold your plastic clips. I have a lot of plastic clips, so I need a lot of different baskets. And if for some reason you watch this video or this demo and you don't like this one, I think I have like 3 or 4 other types of fabric baskets and bins and round little projects that you can make, and they're free tutorials on my YouTube channel, which is TheCraftyGemini. So you can just do a search and type in CraftyGemini fabric basket and they'll all pop up for you. Okay, let's go ahead and say hey to some friends that are tuning in. Hi, Deborah. Hey, Diane. Miss Diane is on. Pat is on from Ohio. Hi, Margie. Carol is tuning in. She says from hot West Virginia. It has been raining here again and again. It is definitely summer here in Florida. The rain actually just stopped. So hopefully our power stays on so we can continue with this live stream. Hi, Jacqueline. Hey, Heather. Awesome. All right, so if y'all can see me and hear me, just let me know. Make sure everything looks to be working fine since y'all are chatting here in the chat box. Now, if you're watching us on Facebook and you like these kinds of demos, and maybe you tune in every Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern to catch the demo that I do here live, go ahead and give it a thumbs up right now and click the share button. That will help spread the word so that more of your crafty friends on Facebook can see it. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can do the same thing. Click share and then give the video a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, make sure you do that. And that way, if you click the little bell icon, you'll also be notified every time I go live and whenever I post a new video tutorial to my channel. All right, so let's go over quickly. Jessie says, I'm working if anyone asks, with a big wink emoji. That is hilarious, girl. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so let's go ahead and pick up the camera here over my shoulder. I'll show you a little bit more about the project and we'll go over supplies and what you need to make it. Okay, so here, let me scoot this over. Obviously, you can overflow these little baskets, but they sit kind of flat if you just, weigh them down with whatever your little supplies are. All right, so this, and I'm gonna move this camera a little bit to show y'all more this way. I'll probably end up moving this angle a little bit more when I get to sewing too, so bear with me. All right, so here it is. This one is full of my clips, and I still have more over there. This is another little one that I made, and I just used some fun Sewing Notions fabric. The way that this comes together, and I'm gonna unsnap it here, is it's flat, it's a circle. This is like the quickest thing to make, but I'll also, as we work on the project, I'm gonna go over the different skills that you're practicing, right? So one of the things that I've learned over the years, there's a little piece of tailor's chalk. I'll put that with my other marking stuff. One of the things that I noticed over the years is that when I teach students, whether kids or adults in person, it always helps to build on the skill set with a project that they can complete from beginning to end. So it might not be like the most amazing backpack or handbag that you want to make, but by tackling little projects like this little basket that we're going to make in a second, you are learning the skills that you need to then carry those over to the bigger, more complex projects. Over the past 15 years that I've been teaching people in person and online how to sew, I've noticed that the beginners that jump right into a super complex project are more likely to give up sewing because they think it's not for them. So if you are either new or maybe you're teaching a child, a teenager, or somebody that's new to sewing, consider teaching them these types of little projects so that they feel successful from the beginning and they're more likely to stick with it, okay? So you can see how this closes. I just have installed little plastic snaps just on 2 ends here. This would not really work to make it a full pouch because even if we put one here, you'll obviously still have holes here. I mean, unless you're gonna like fill this half moon shape up with a ton of snaps, but I wouldn't do that. So the idea is we're gonna practice a couple basic things to make this little basket. If you're traveling to a retreat or a class, you can always just unsnap it, have your clips in obviously like a zipper pouch or something more closed, and then this will lie flat. You can just slip it in with your other fabric sewing materials. Okay. Let's see, make sure I don't have any questions popping up so far. So I'm gonna snap this guy back up. I'm gonna scoot these over here to where my sewing machine kind of is on that side. And the supplies that you're gonna need for this are super simple. Basic sewing supplies like a cutting mat, rotary cutter, scissors, even a marker, because you can trace around your template shape and then just use scissors to cut, okay? Oh, thank you, Virginia. She says you're the best teacher ever. Thanks. So what we're going to need here is fabric, some type of a batting, and I'm going to be using Bosal Light Fusible Batting. Y'all, if you have been watching my tutorials or my WIP Wednesdays, you have seen me use this stuff. So I want to give you yet another application because this stuff is super quick and easy and great to use for these types of little projects. You don't have to bother with quilting. You fuse it and you're good to go. So fabric, the fusible batting. I just have an 8.5-inch dish here that we're going to use as our template. Obviously, you can make it smaller, a little bit bigger. Just when we get to installing the snaps, I'll talk a little bit about, you know, what to keep in mind if you are making it bigger or smaller, because the dimensions of where we install the snaps may differ. And then to finish off the raw edges, I'm just going to use some fold over elastic. And we actually talked a little bit about this recently in my online bag club, because some of you end up buying this, whether it's at a shop or online, and then you get it and you're kind of like, it's cute, it comes in cute colors, but like, how do I use it? So fold over elastic is awesome. I've included a link in the description box below the video on where you can find some in assorted colors. But this one that I'm using, they come in varying widths. This is a 5/8 inch wide fold over elastic, and it's probably the most common width of this to find. It's soft, it's stretchy. I have used this stuff for probably 13 or 14 years. I used to use it when I made my kids' cloth diapers. I make it to finish off tank tops, tank top dresses, underwear, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to work more with this kind of product, right, fold over elastic, or FOE, you'll also hear it called online and in sewing groups. If you want to learn how to do this, I think this is the perfect little project to try it out in, because it's one of those things that you don't want to stretch too much, but you don't want to stretch too little, depending on the application. And so I'm going to share with you a couple tips and a zigzag stitch to use to apply it. Okay. All right. Okay. Jackie says, your plate is the same pattern as my fine china that I used during my marriage. Haha, this is Corel. My mom gave me this because I always struggle to find plates that are like this size, like a lunch size plate. You know, they're either too small or massive. But yeah, that's what we're going to be using. So it measures 8.5 inches across here. So let's start. I'm going to be using my Martelli roundabout mat. Y'all know me. If I'm cutting something in the round, like we did in the Clammy Quilt Club, and we cut curved patchwork pieces, this comes in really handy. Now, a quick tip is if you have your fabric straight off of the bolt, you can just cut a strip from it, okay, in the same, like a little bit bigger than the width of the plate that you're going to be using. So, I mean, even if you had, what, 1/4 yard, you can make this, right? Because 1/4 yard is 9 inches, and you know, if you're using 8.5 or even 9, 8, somewhere in that range, it'll work perfectly. So I've already made one out of this black fabric, which is this one. And actually, let me tell you about these fabrics. We have these fabrics still in stock. We only have maybe a bolt or two of each. So when we sell out of this, it's a wrap. So if you're wanting to make this project or something else that features these cute kind of Sewing Notions fabrics, the manufacturer is Robert Kaufman, so you know they're great quality designer quilting cottons. And this one is super cute. It has like these fun, brighter colors of thread spools. This is the black one that I use that just has a bunch of Sewing Notions on it. And then this is the cream or natural background colored version of the Sewing Notion. So I'm going to make one out of this fabric here today. And if you're wanting to find this fabric, we do sell it in our online shop, and the link, we'll put it in the chat here on Facebook, and then also in the YouTube comment, like the description box. I put the link in there for you. All right, so quick tip. If you cut the strip from yardage and you have your selvages here, just leave it like this, wrong sides together and folded, the same way that it comes off the bolt. And all you have to do is place your template piece on top. And actually, I'm going to cut this off because I don't want to have this overhang. Where is my little ruler? Here. Zoom out? Yeah. There. Right? Better? Okay. So let's get rid of this. So I have a smaller chunk here, and that way I can rotate my mat. And we do carry these in the online shop. I'll show you what it is because it's a rotating cutting mat, and it's 3 parts to it. So, okay, I have my plate on here. Make sure I'm not missing anything on either side. I'm going to take my 45mm rotary cutter, and I am just going to cut a little bit, still keeping my hand on the plate, cut a little bit more, rotate it, and if I move my hand and I move the plate, I'll just put it back on where it needs to be. Where did I cut? Here. And this is where I was saying earlier, you can always take a fabric marker or chalk or whatever and trace around your template first, and then just go back and cut with scissors or whatever. But I find that with the rotary cutter and the rotating cutting mat, it makes it kind of simple and quick to cut through both layers at once because you'll need 2 templates, you know, matching, same size. Make sure nothing sticks. Okay, so I have my 2 circles. This little guy is waist. And then we have the 2 pieces we need to get started. So one of them is going to get fused to that Bozal light fusible batting. This stuff is great because it's not too bulky. Now, I have not made this in like a thicker, really kind of a plush thermolam fleece or foam interfacing. I would probably recommend against that unless you're willing to, you know, experiment with your fabric and try it. Because of the way that the little basket comes together, I think that it may be a little bit too stiff, right? A little too bulky. But of course, you can try it out and give it a go. But this type of a lightweight batting tends to work great. So I thought I had a smaller chunk here. I did. I didn't want to have to open a whole new package. So save all your scrap pieces from your battings and interfacings, y'all, for these types of little projects. So I'm going to place just one of my fabric circles close to 2 edges here to conserve a little bit. And then I'm just going to follow around the curve with my rotary cutter. And it's cool because if you place the fabric on the adhesive side of the interfacing, it stays together because it's kind of scratchy there and it creates a little bit of friction between the fabric and the interfacing. And so it makes it easier, I find, to just cut right around it. But if you've never worked with this light fusible batting, it's great. It's lightweight, it's fusible. If you don't have a fusible batting like this, you could always just either spray-based your fabric circle to a piece of just regular quilt batting. Try to go more for the light to medium loft as far as the thickness and the weight of it goes. All right, so now let's go ahead and fuse this together. So I always notice I just took off the top here to the Martelli roundabout, and the second layer is a pressing mat. So super handy, especially if you have small spaces. Now I'm gonna double check always before I hit it with the iron, and let me kickstart my iron here. I make sure that the scratchier feeling side is facing up because I want that touching the wrong side of my fabric, and that ensures that that's the adhesive side. The little scratchiness that you feel are the little dots of adhesive, okay? Then I take my little water spray mist bottle and I'm just gonna mist it a little bit, and then I'm gonna hit it with the iron, and the heat is gonna create steam now from the water that I just sprayed to help melt down the adhesive and stick everything together, okay? Hi, Lucretia, she says she's late. What are we making? We are making a little basket to hold your sewing clips. But the key of this is that we're going to practice some important sewing skills. So we've already gone over one, cutting around curved template pieces, okay? You have to take your time and just go slow. This is fun. I'm telling you, this roundabout, the Martelli roundabout cutting mat and ironing surface is great. It's like once you have it, you realize, oh, I can use it for all these things. Let me put the iron there. Give it a couple seconds to cool off because you want that adhesive not to be moving around. You want to give it some time to cool off, and that way you have that good permanent bond between the fabric and the light fusible batting. All right, Richard is asking, could you use a zipper to close this that opens up all the way? Sure. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you can redesign projects and patterns out there, right? So the way that I'm going to show you is just for, you know, the purpose that I designed it for here, to practice some skills. I always like to come up with little projects like this, like I said, for teaching kids and beginners. Because the more successful you can have them be from the jump, the more likely they are to stick with the sewing and then build up to more complex projects, okay? Jessie says it's worth every penny. I know, girl, this thing is so expensive. When my friend Latifa told me about this, I was like, no, I'm not spending $120 on this. And then I did, and I was like, oh, I gotta sell these in my shop because they're so good. So yes, it is one of those things. All right. Okay, so we have one interface circle and one that's not, except I don't know where it went. Where'd you go, little circle? Oh, Lordy. Not here, not here, not here. Oh my God, seriously? Somebody must have seen what I did with it while we're here live on camera. Did you see what I did with it? This one is fused. There's only one. Seriously, like I separated them and then it flew off. Do you see one over there on the floor on the other side of the table? Y'all, somebody snapped. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut another one. This is nuts. Are you kidding me? And then we're gonna find it in a little bit. Oh, there it is. Ta-da! It was blending in with the bolt of the fabric. I'm like, seriously, I'm doing this live. Where could it have gone? Okay, so now we have the two. One circle is interfaced and the other one is not, okay? So now I want you to place them together, interfacing side to the wrong side of the opposite circle. So what you want to look at on both sides is the pretty side of the fabric, okay? Teresa says, I love it. You sound like me when I lose something. Tell me it doesn't happen all the time. The worst is when you like are making a garment and you have all the different parts and pieces and then you like can't find the one sleeve or the neckband and then you recut it, and as you recut it, you know, you're like trying to see if you have enough scraps to use it from your, you know, your scrap bits left to cut out another one. And as soon as I sit at the sewing machine, it's like I had already placed it right at the machine for me to sew and I didn't even see it. The worst. Okay. Jackie B says, oh, the house elf is at your house. Yep. Snatching all my stuff. Okay, so now we are going to stitch around the outside edge of this circle, okay? You're basically combining now the interface fabric with the one that's not, and I'm just going to use a zigzag stitch and stay close to the outer edge to bring it all to make one panel, okay? So let's go ahead and bring over my little Juki LB5020 here. Now for this, if you have a machine that allows you to adjust the zigzag settings on it, I already there because I want you to be able to see my settings. You know, sometimes it's helpful, and I try to do that in my videos, is like tell people what needle I'm using, what stitch length, what am I doing, so that you know how to troubleshoot this sometimes when you're working on projects, okay? Because it's not always just like the default setting on your machine. So I'm going to select stitch number 7 on my machine is the zigzag, but then you'll see that my machine defaults to a stitch width, meaning the zig and the zag, okay, is 5 millimeters wide. That's kind of wide for this edge, so I'm actually going to drop that down a little bit to 4 millimeters, okay? So the zig and the zag this way is not going to be quite as wide, all right? It's going to be a little bit narrower, and that will help me just combine the pieces right around the edge. Then the next setting here is your stitch length, okay? And that is the distance this way from the zig and the zag. So if I go all the way down to practically 0 on this, it's going to be like this. It's going to fill in zigzagging, but there's basically going to be no fabric space in between. It's more like a satin stitch, okay? And then I want to space that out a little bit because this is just to hold the layers together. So it's kind of like an edge basting stitch, but with a zigzag. So I'm going to bump that up to 2.5. All right, and that just takes time to kind of eyeball it and know your machine and what the purpose is of the stitch. So I'm just giving you some general guidelines that you could put on in your machine, and then if you find that your machine does the stitches a little bit narrower or wider than mine, you can always adjust that. So another tip here, I have just grabbed it and I noticed that I have the fabric that's not interfaced on top. That is obviously going to be the fabric that moves more on us because it's cut into a circle, meaning outside the edge here is all bias cut edge. And you know about bias, right? Where if we pull on it, it's going to stretch out and get distorted. So whenever you have a piece of fabric that has any bias cuts or is not interfaced, so it's more likely to distort and move on us, and the other piece is interfaced, meaning it's more stable, I like to flip these. Put the fabric that is more likely to stretch and move down towards the feed dogs of your sewing machine, and that will allow the feed dogs to be directly touching that more easily distorted fabric, and that way it will help feed it in a little bit neater and more consistent than you can from the top, especially if you don't have a walking foot on. If you have a walking foot, then it won't really matter, right? Because you have feed dogs on top and bottom, and this is not too bulky, so it should work either way. So I'm going to put some clips just to try and keep everything together and, you know, minimize stuff moving on me. Susan's asking how often do I change the blades in the rotary cutter. I change them probably every month or two, depends on how much I'm cutting. But remember, I do this like every single day, and I cut myself, and my team cuts fabric for online orders and stuff like that. So we have multiple rotary cutters that we kind of go through. So it's going to vary for everyone depending on how much you use it, right? And the types of fabrics that you use. I have found that using the rotary cutter on thicker and more polyester-based fabrics like fleece or cuddle fleece and stuff like that, you'll burn through them blades in no time, okay? So if you're using mostly cotton and you rarely ever sew, it's going to last you a lot longer than somebody who's making, you know, cuddle fleece blankets to sell online or something. All right. Okay. Oh, Lisa says, OMG, such a great tip. Thank you. You're welcome, Lisa. I'm glad to share. I like to do these kinds of lives because I'm processing it in my head, my decisions and choices. And so I get to share them with you right there in the moment. I think that's a great way to teach and for people to learn. Okay. So I'm going to start on the edge. And so the trick with this is, let's go ahead and try and show you on bigger scale here with this plate. So if this is my circle and my bamboo knitting needle here is my needle, I'm zigzagging here. I'm going into the fabric and right to the edge. Into the fabric and right to the edge. That is the zigzag I want you to do for basting and holding those stitches together, okay? So when it zags over, it's grabbing the edge of the fabric layers and then in the fabric and over and in the fabric and over, okay? So that's your goal. And the way you're going to achieve that is ding, ding, ding. Rule number 1, do not look at your needle. That needle's going to do the stitch that you set it to do. So your job is to watch the edge of the fabric as it's feeding under the presser foot. And I'm going to zoom this in because I think this is important. This is going to like that. And I'm going to try to keep my fingers out of the way. I mean, it's tricky because it's kind of so close up for the needle to show you, and then watch my hand as I'm sewing this curve. It's almost like I'm anchoring it here in the center and letting the feed dogs pull the fabric through, and my hand is just going in like a counterclockwise motion as I feed the fabric through. So again, that will take practice, will take time, but like I said early on, this is the perfect little project to practice these super important skills on. Sewing curves are important for all types of projects. Zigzagging close to an outer edge. If you want to get into garment sewing and you don't have a serger, oftentimes the pattern or instructions will call for finishing raw edges with a zigzag, and this is oftentimes how you'd want to do it so that the zigzag picks up on the outer edge. So important skills to practice. And again, in a cute little functional project. I'm over here talking. Let me make sure I still have all my fabric underneath. You always want to make sure that you're grabbing all the layers, okay? And I'm sewing kind of at a weird angle, but again, it's a good skills to practice here, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So like I mentioned, if you're teaching a beginner or a kid or a teen or something, they'll still be developing these skills without the need for the skill set to be perfect in order to achieve the finished project, okay? So I'm coming back around to the beginning. I'm just going to stitch over top of my initial stitches by a couple. All right, so let's give that just a little press. And if you do have a clapper, it's not just for setting creases. You can also help flatten the edges out if you were kind of stretching things out or distorting them along the bias as you went, which is not really going to matter for this project again. Was that the bottom? This is the bottom side. Yeah, this is the interface side. Okay. So it also helps to set things. So set stitches, set edges. Okay. So nice and flat. I'm just going to trim away. I saw tails here. Oh, no, I already cut them, did I? Yeah, I guess so. Okay. So that's that. And it's almost done. So now what we're going to do, so I'll keep one here in the shot because I know we get people tuning in late all the time and it's hard for me to kind of stop and re-say what I'm doing. Okay. This is the little basket that we're working on, y'all. If you're just tuning in, it's just a little snap basket, practicing some skills here, sewing around curves. And now the next skill I wanted to show y'all with this project is how to install fold over elastic. Now, depending on the project that you're using the fold over elastic for, it may call for different applications. Sometimes the designer, say it's a garment or something, will tell you, you know, you need to stretch it a little bit as you go, or they'll give you some reference marks and points that you'll mark on the fabric side of the project, as well as the fold over elastic, and then you're basically stretching to meet it at that point. But this is just to kind of get a handle on working with this type of product, okay? So I'm just gonna leave my purple thread in here, why not? And this is the little basket we're making if you're just tuning in. Remember that these fabrics, we do carry them in the online shop. They're in stock. The link is in the description box of this YouTube video. We put it in the chat here for you on Facebook, and you can find it in my online shop always at craftygemini.com/shop. I say always, I'm meaning the online shop is there always. Once this fabric is out of stock, it's a wrap. We're not carrying it anymore, okay? So definitely check it out. Now for the fold over elastic, this technique is super simple and straightforward because you don't even have to like measure and cut. You're gonna cut it off of whatever the roll or yardage is that you got once you're done. So you'll know that you have enough, okay, of the fold over elastic to go all the way around. Okay. Donna says, I use some of my messed up bowl cozies as pocket holders. And pocket holders, what do you mean by pocket holders? Leanne is asking, what is the best make of rotary cutter to use for a beginner? I really like these Olfa ergonomic ones because oftentimes for a beginner, you're kind of new to using a rotary cutter, and we have found this out in years and years of hosting retreats, that some of the other rotary cutters, and I don't really have any here because over the years I've kind of gotten rid of the other ones and picked up these, is that the ones where you kind of press in and slide down to expose the blade, a lot of times when you first start sewing and quilting and using a rotary cutter, people will open the blade and just set it down. Like they use it, they set it down, and the blade is open and exposed, and then they go on to the next step in their project, right? Well, when we sew at retreats, when I hosted retreats, we have a lot of people at the same time working on different tables and stuff. And so you never want to have that blade just exposed, because if that blade is out and somebody comes by and just taps it, they're going to get sliced, right? These blades are super sharp. And so I like these because, one, they have the safety lock. So if it's pushed in, it's open. You can see the blade comes out. But if I push it from this side and I try to press the handle, the blade doesn't come out. So great for storage and like when you're done leaving it somewhere. But the cool thing is that you have to press this handle down in order for the blade to be out and exposed. Once they stop cutting and they just place it, because you let go of the handle, it automatically goes back in. So I have found over the years that this is one of the safest and most ergonomic ways. It's also a left and right-handed rotary cutter, and we actually carry these in the shop. I never say that, but we do have these in the shop. I carry the 45mm one as well as the 28mm one. Maybe this is not listed, but the 28mm I think is listed in the shop. But yeah, I'll need to add these later on today because I know we have some in stock. So you could basically take this off and place the blade, instead of on the left side for right-hand dominant people like me, you can put it on the left-hand side, and I've done that before and shared some left-hand cutting tips before on some other videos in my YouTube channel, so you can do a search for those. Oh, she says she uses them for baskets. Yeah, okay, that makes sense because those little bowl cozies are like the perfect little shape, right, to hold a lot. Okay. Yeah, Charity says that's her favorite rotary cutter too. Awesome. All right, so let's grab the fold over elastic. Now the fold over elastic is called FOE, or fold over elastic, because there is a little line that runs right down the middle of it, okay? So you can more easily fold it right in half. So that's going to be it. We're going to fold it in half like that, install it around the edge of our circle here, and that's what's going to finish off these raw edges. Simple, right? If you didn't have fold over elastic and you had a serger and you like the look of the serger, you could even just serge around the edge. That's cool too. Okay, so to start, I'm just going to place the circle inside so that that line that I just told you that runs lengthwise down the middle of the fold over elastic is basically at the top edge of the circle. And then I'm going to fold this edge over top. That's it. Okay, I'm just going to do that for like the first 3/4 of an inch or so, and I'm going to put it under my foot. And I'm just going to zigzag it into place to kind of give me a starting point. And if you see me like messing here, is because I'm trying not to kick the tripod leg of this camera. Okay. Let me get y'all a better little angle here. Sometimes I'm scared to close up because then y'all see my little mess ups. And I'm like, I don't always do my best sewing on camera, but I always say that and then it turns out fine. So I won't say it this time. Okay. Jackie B says, I think I have FOE somewhere in my stash. I'm telling you, if you go to the craft store and you're like, oh, I wonder what this is, you probably have it in your stash. If you just collect stuff like I do and then you're like, one day I'll use it or figure out how to use it, this is the time. All right, so I'm still in a zigzag stitch. The zig and the zag, remember the stitch width. I'm going to go ahead. Yeah, there we go. You can see it here. I'm going to go ahead and make it maybe a little bit wider. is the tip that I would share with you, especially if this is your first time stitching down fold over elastic, because if you go narrower, you run the chance of not catching the fold over elastic either on one side or both, or it might look a little wonky because it's smaller, so you're not spanning the full width of it. And so, excuse me, so if you can go wider on the zigzag width, go for it. I'm gonna go up to 4.5. 5 millimeters would probably be fine too, but I'm just gonna go with 4.5 because I think I can do it. So now the trick is going to be multitasking. Your goal is to continue placing the outer edge of the circle at that center line, and then with your right hand closing over the fold over elastic so that as it goes through the presser foot, the zig and the zag is now catching on both sides. Okay? And if you want to, slow down the speed of your sewing machine first. I'm going to take a couple stitches at the beginning to kind of get situated. Okay, now make sure that when you stop, you set your machine to stop with the needle down. That's going to help you because you'll need to stop and kind of grab the two parts and put them together. But this, very important skills right here if you want to up your sewing game, attaching elastic with a zigzag stitch, combining two different pieces, and with a curve. I mean, this is leveling up. It might not look like much in the finished project, but you are practicing those skills that will definitely help you going forward. If you want to finish an arm opening of a tank top or a tank top dress with the fold over elastic, this will help get you ready for that. Okay? Oh, thank you. Penny's Crafts Creation says, I'm so happy to catch a live video. I've been watching your videos for a very long time. Well, thank you for joining us. So now, let me make sure I move this over. I'm kind of crooked here. But the point is the zigzag should be spanning left and right and left and right. If you find that you have to stop maybe like every inch because something is like not right or you feel like you're moving too far over in one direction or the other, a quick tip would be to increase that stitch width. Instead of then having to manipulate, move your stuff to the left or to the right, make that stitch width wider so it spans more while you can still maintain it, right down the middle, okay? So again, I have this open, and you'll see that once you take a few stitches, it's like the fold over elastic by itself just wants to fold over. So that part of it makes it easier. But I'm just with my pointer finger kind of holding it here. Fit it in there. Okay, my needle is still down. Good. I'm going to grab like another 1.5 inches or so in there and hold. Make sure everything is in place. And you know what? For me, it's actually a little bit easier to go faster. So I think I slowed it down too much. But you'll find the tempo that works for you as you try it out. I know some of you are like, whoa. Sometimes you'll find that. Like if you slow down, it's like a choppier finish, right? And if it's a circle, we want it to be smooth all the way around. So oftentimes it just helps to go faster. It's kind of like quilting, whether it's free motion or long arm quilting. If you're doing a swirl or a curlicue of some kind, instead of like moving the stuff to get a round curve, it's easier if you just swipe it. It's a more organic and continuous motion. So see what I did there? I had to lift up the presser foot to kind of make sure that everything is aligned in the middle. But because my needle is down and in the project, I don't have to worry about losing my spot. So if you can put the needle down, whether it's with a button or by turning the hand wheel towards you, make sure you do it for stuff like this. All right. I'm just going to continue to work all the way around the circle. And notice that for this project, I'm not stretching the fold over elastic. If I was making, say, a pocket on the side of a diaper bag or a backpack or something where you wanted the pocket to cinch in, you would pull on the elastic like you would install any other elastic. If you've ever installed elastic on a sleeve or at the waist of a dress or something, you know that if you pull the elastic while it's being stitched, or even a waistband, right? It will cinch things in, and then you stitch it into place, and that's where it will hold. So for this, I'm only feeding it through basically a one-to-one connection between the outer edge of the fabric and the fold over elastic. So before you work on projects, I think, where you're pulling on the elastic and you're trying to gauge how much to pull and not to pull, this would be a great project because you don't have to pull. So just learn how to handle the fold over elastic first before you work on a project that has you stretching it and all that. There. And be careful not to stretch the elastic, especially if you're new to it, because it will thin out. So like if I pull it, it will thin out the width of the whole finished elastic. And on this project, you probably don't want that because it's going to kind of crimple up. It won't lie flat. All right, so now when we get to the end, I'm just going to cut these threads real quick here. And I'm just going to continue what I'm doing here, but overlap it by a little bit. And it will be kind of a messy finish. But again, this was just to practice some of these skills. And because the fold over elastic is synthetic, and so is the polyester thread that I'm using, all I'm going to do is hit it with a lighter to help fuse things down. And that way I don't have to worry about it fraying. So I'll show you that quick hack in a minute. If you like a clean finish, don't do this. All right, so now I've gone over the initial stitches and I've overlapped the fold over elastic over itself. So it's not going to finish perfectly fine because one is bulkier now that's coming around over top of it. But I'm just going to do now like 2 back stitches here. I'm going to cut my threads and then I'll show you because I just cut the elastic. Let me grab my lighter. So this is what I mean by attaching the fold over elastic. Okay, so this is what I was saying earlier. I attached the fold over elastic without cutting an actual set measurement from my yardage, all right? So once it's like this and I backstitch there, so I've secured it in place, let me grab my scissors and I'm just gonna cut the elastic like that. And you'll see that it's fraying a little bit. Just take your lighter, carefully melt it, and then I just hit it with the metal side of the lighter so that I don't burn my finger. And then that helps kind of flatten it and set it into place as it cools after you've melted it. Okay, so if you're using synthetic stuff, whether it's a polyester thread, which I did, so like my short thread tails, I'll do the same thing. And then I just tap it down. Okay, and that, my friends, is going to be good enough for me. So that is the finished little thing. So some of the skills that we practice, right? Cutting around curved fabric pieces, interfacing, just something simple, basting. So the first time that we baste around the edges is kind of like your prep step before you install the fold over elastic because you're still having to manipulate the round, like I showed you, through your sewing machine all the way around the edge with a zigzag stitch. Then we go in and put the fold over elastic on it. Notice how it lies flat because I did not pull on the elastic. If you pull on the elastic, it will bubble in on itself, which can be cool, but you just need to figure out, you know, what size the elastic or what length the elastic should be, how much you're pulling it to determine how much you want it to tighten in and scrunch in, okay? I did not make this top. Susan was asking about this top. I didn't make this t-shirt. I think it's from Old Navy. All right, let's see. Yes, Jackie says, I'd use my stiletto that came in your clammy quilt box. That would be a great way to do it, especially for those of you that sew fast like me and don't want to have your fingertips close to the needle. That would work as well. And a stiletto is just a sharp tool. It can be plastic, it can be metal. The ones that they got in their clammy quilt box was a set like this, which actually we're out of stock of right now, but it's this pointy one here. That tip. And the way that you use a stiletto is just by kind of pointing it down into the fabric to help guide something through the presser foot of the machine. So yes, for tricky spots or curved things, it really can come in handy. All right. Let's see. Okay. Next step. I was like, what's next? Let's install our snaps. So for snaps, if you don't already have a cam snap kit, I highly recommend it. I put the link in the description box of the YouTube video on where you can get it on Amazon. It'll come with a little plier set like this. I legit have had this for I think 15 years. The stiletto, because you need to make a hole in order to install the snap. And then you have the snaps, and they come in a ton of different colors and different sizes. I just linked to the most generic one, the one that I have, for just, you know, easy and quick snap type of projects. Now for installing the snap, we are going to take some measurements. Oh, I think that's okay there. And we're going to grab something to mark with. Let me grab my fabric marker, and then my ruler. So first I'm going to separate out the parts of the snaps that we'll need. So if you notice, let me dump that out. I just have 2 full snaps, okay, installed. One on each end and the whole thing folds in half, okay, to make the little basket. And obviously it's nothing without weight in it. It's just gonna flop over. It's like a little open taco. And when you put the weight in it, then that's what holds it, all right? So in order to install 2 full snaps, you need 4 separate components for each working snap, if that makes sense. And I have a bunch of tutorials for different little pouches and baskets similar to this, a rectangular one, a square one, where I also show you how to install snaps. So if you missed this full demo, no worries. All right, so we need 2 end caps for 1 snap on this side. I need 2 more end caps to install the snap on this side. All right, and this is kind of how I like to teach people visually what parts you need. Then you're gonna need a male end and a female end of a snap on this side for that to connect, okay, to be a full working snap. And then on the opposite side, again, a female end and a male end of this thing, of the snaps. All right, and so those are, like I said, 4 individual components to make up a working snap. Now, let's move these aside because I know I have everything I need. And I'm going to press this circle in half to determine what is the halfway point with my iron right quick. So I'm just going to fold it in half like that and just give it a press. Where's my clapper? Because you know I need that for a crease. Right here. Wait till this iron. So I want to be able to see that crease because we're going to use the crease to measure 1 inch up and 1 inch down and 1 inch in before I start, you know, busting a hole through my fabric with the awl. All right. Welcome, Kathy. She's tuning in from Arkansas, and she says she's just joining on. So we are working on a little basket to hold our sewing clips like that. So we're just installing the snaps now. Now here is my center crease. And I'm just marking, you don't really need to mark this if you ironed it pretty good, but I'm doing that so maybe that helps y'all see it a little bit better. Actually, I'm gonna have to zoom out a hair. Okay, so there you can see the blue line, okay? Like that. So I'm gonna come 1 inch in, and then from the center, 1 inch over, right? I'm gonna go 1 inch up and 1 inch down. So remember early on when I said if you wanted to use a larger plate or a bigger circle template, where are all my parts? I need all my stuff. There. You're going to need to determine where exactly, because like if you make this really big, say you use a 12 inch plate, dinner plate or something, and you measure still the 1 inch in and 1 inch up and down, you're going to be pinching way out on a massive circle. So the whole thing may just flap out open for you. It won't sit up as high as this one because remember we started off with an 8.5 inch diameter here. So keep that in mind. And then again, if you work with a smaller saucer that was maybe 6.5 inches, it's just going to be a smaller space on the inside. It'll be more closed in together, right? So think about that and maybe work on a prototype before you do that. Gracie's asking, I need a clapper. Do you carry those? She's watching from Texas. Absolutely. So you can head over to craftygemini.com/shop. It'll probably be a little bit of a ways down on the page, and we definitely have them in stock. When we're out of stock of this, it takes months to get them back in. So if you can get one now and you don't have one yet, go ahead and use the link on the YouTube video, the description box. I also put the link there so it can take you directly to the page and you don't have to be searching in the shop. All right, so my ruler, here we go. For some of you, just a quick reminder, if you tuned in, what was it, last month maybe, when I had my new 5 inch by 10 inch rulers, we sold out in like 10 or 15 minutes. We finally got a huge stock back in. And so if you missed out on that, we send out an email to everybody that was on the wait list. I know there was hundreds of you. A bunch of you have got in on it, but I just wanted to remind you again, if you didn't get my 5 inch by 10 inch ruler from that WIP Wednesday, because we sold out too quick, definitely check that out. So you can order one because they are in stock right now. All right. So I'm going to go and watch what I'm going to do with my ruler here. Can y'all see that? Yeah. So remember how my ruler has that dot, a 1 inch and 1 inch, what I call the 0 point. I'm going to use that as my guide. So I'm placing my 0 point right there, the intersection on the outer edge. And it's the 1 inch mark because the dot is 1 inch over. So it's aligned with my center blue line, which was a crease, but I marked. And now I'm 1 inch in. So 1 inch up is going to be right here. And 1 inch down is going to be right here. Boom. So I have my 2 dots of where I need to make my openings, right? I'll show you what I do when I actually install it, because sometimes you might measure a little bit off. I'll show you what I do in a second. But we're going to flip it over, do the same thing on this side. 1 inch up and 1 inch down. Okay, now I like to install the male end first. Okay, so we're going to start here. I'm going to go right to this mark that I made. You make a hole through all your layers with the awl. Okay, then if this is the inside, so pick which side you want that fabric to be on the inside and keep it like you're looking at it from the inside, right? This is going to be the exterior fabric. So if I'm holding it like that and I just made a hole there, I'm going to take an end cap and slip it in from the back, from the exterior fabric, and make sure that that center prong pops up on the inside. Then I'm going to take the male end of the snap and place it over top. And then holding it, I take my snap setting pliers, center it, and just give it a squeeze. Okay, so that male end one is already installed. Now I refold it on that center crease line, and what I do is just press on this freshly installed snap. And what that does is it creates an indentation on the opposite side, and so I just give it a quick glance and see, is it directly where I had marked earlier? Just as kind of a way to double check your measurements, and it is. It's spot on, right on my blue dot. So I know, okay, my measurements were on point. I can now proceed to make the opening. Now, because the male end one sticks out, that's why I install it first, so that it kind of carves into the fabric on the other side, and that's how you're able to see it from that crease, okay? The female end one is flat. It's not going to give you a mark. So now I do the same thing. The end cap gets installed from the exterior side. Push the fabric down around that center prong so that, you know, you can actually install it correctly. If it's too bulky around the center prong, when you press down with the pliers, it won't set it correctly. So it might snap closed, but when you pull it, you'll see pieces go flying. And then we're going to slip this one on top. Turn it because I'm right hand dominant here. And then the same with the snap pliers. Give it a press. So now you can double check and you can see if you installed one of each. Okay, and there's the snap. So now we're going to come to the opposite side. Again, and you can always double check. Like if that one looks good to you, you can double check and make sure that the other one's kind of aligned. Because we're installing these, you know, we're making the holes and we're installing the snap parts centered, right? If you poke the hole a little bit to the left or to the outside of the mark that you made, you're going to throw it off by even 1/8 or 1/4 inch, and that will make a difference. So again, end cap goes in from the exterior fabric side. Excuse me, male end goes on this way. Install, boom. This is super quick. Refold it, press down, boom. That little crease mark was right over top of my mark, so I know I'm good to go there. End cap from the back, push through all the fabric layers, install the female end. And once you install thousands of snaps like I have over the years, remember I made all my kids cloth diapers. Everything was snaps and fold over elastic and absorbent fabrics. Now we're going to close these up, and there is the little basket. Of course, I hard pressed that crease in there, but that's not a big deal. We can just press it flat a little bit, and like I said earlier, once you fill it, that's what gives the added weight to allow it to lie flatter, or like to sit flatter at the bottom of it. So we're going to snap this sucker shut, and then I'm going to grab a bunch of my clips and start filling it in here. Like that. So this is great because you can make them and just keep them next to your sewing machine. Like I said, you can travel to a retreat or a class or a weekend getaway with friends, and you can have them in another baggie. But as you're working with them, and I'll tell you why I came up with this. One, to practice these, what I call, you know, like important skills to build on. Sewing around curves, using a zigzag stitch around curves. It requires a lot more hand-eye coordination than you would think, as well as installing fold-over elastic. Okay, so different little skills you can work on, and you'll still get a cute little functional project, right? The second part of this thing is that instead of having, and I don't have it here, but like a smaller basket that has a tighter opening, this is quick, right? So like if I'm sewing and this is on my table, I can literally pull the clips and just throw it. Like they'll land in there because the top is wider and more open. Or if you're taking it over to an ironing surface where you have a lot of edges and curves maybe that you need a clip, I can just grab a handful versus a smaller basket where my hand doesn't necessarily fit completely to grab the whole thing. So it is a more open. You can even use it for like thread snips. Like if you are trimming threads, you can have this next to your sewing machine and just throw stuff in there in a little catch-all basket, right? So Oh, thank you. Penny says, this is such a great little project. Thanks for sharing it. Yep. And Lucretia says, great project to get practice with the curves. Absolutely. And so those are the kinds of projects I like to teach, especially for beginners. Like I always say, you know, build up those skills on smaller, more instant gratification projects, and then build up to the more complex ones. So I think it turned out super cute, especially with this cute little Sewing Notions fabric. And let me put this Martelli roundabout back together. I'm going to show you the fabrics one more time, okay? So remember that you can always shop with us at craftygemini.com/shop. I'm going to zoom this out real quick so I can show y'all some of these fabrics. I saw some of you were saying you're going to make them as Christmas gifts. You can do them as secret sister gifts, swap gifts. I mean, if you sew or quilt and have plastic clips, come on. We can never have too many little baskets like that. All right, so these are the 3 fabrics. We still have some in stock and we sell them in half-yard increments. Please read the page and the product description because sometimes people are not used to ordering fabric online. So I'll give you a quick example. If you want 1 yard of this fabric, you would put in a quantity of 2 because they're sold in half-yard increments. You're not going to get 2 separate half-yard chunks. It'll be 1 continuous yard, but it's done in half-yard increments. So if you want 2 yards of this one, put in a quantity of 4, right? Because half and half is 1 yard and half is 2 yards. So count it like that by half-yard increments, and that allows us to sell the fabric. Like if you want 1.5 yards or you just want half a yard, you don't have to buy a complete yard. If you just want half of each, just do a quantity of 1 each and that's fine, okay? So craftygemini.com/shop, these are the 3 prints we have left. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. If you do go ahead and make this little basket project, go ahead and share it online, Instagram, on my Facebook page. I'd love to see the fabrics that you chose and let me know how tricky or not tricky it was to sew the curves and install some fold over elastic. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. I will see y'all next week for another WIP Wednesday, and have a good rest of your week. Bye.